In this chapter, we are discussing chord progressions. Obviously, a chord progression is a row of chords, but sometimes these can be decided in advance and other times they can almost be random. The fact is, if you are looking for something and playing on the keyboard, sometimes you will end up with a chord progression that you did not think of beforehand. Like many things nowadays, it doesn't really matter how you get there, but it is the result that counts. Previously, certainly in classical circles, there would have been certain rules that one would follow. However, rules are also meant to be broken, so as long as you end up where you want to end up, then the means are justified. But we can still end up at a point where we don't know where to go musically. And although we don't have to rely on rules, it is possibly good to have certain examples that you have studied or at least heard. And so, we would like to present exercise 5 to help with this. And I'll play it on a brass instrument. The instrument I will be using is the Cine Symphony Light Library, and the patch I am using is the Brass Ensemble Light patch. This patch has been modified in that we do not hear the trumpet sound, but mainly the horns. And also, I am controlling the dynamics with my foot controller once again. If we listen, we certainly hear something that is quite commonly used in not only classical music, but also in popular music. So now I'll play exercise 5. The fact is that sometimes even with one chord you can create a musical passage. Even 2 chords is very common. Certainly with 4 chords you can create an immense amount of music. If I play the chords on another instrument, for example the Albion 1 strings, I will simply play the chord progression low down on the keyboard, and then move up 2 octaves. Then, I can play it in the middle octave. So you can see that just with those 4 chords, you can create a wide-ranging passage of music that can last up to even 5 minutes without being too repetitive. Another thing that helps make these passages interesting is choosing the most interesting bass note. Many people will simply play the root in the bass of a chord progression. In this example, we can see that the bass plays a G under the E-7 chord, and this is much more interesting than the bass simply following the root of each chord. If we hear it with the bass following the chords, it also sounds pleasant. But by choosing the G under the E minor chord, the bass has a melodic flow to it. A good exercise is to play this passage in different keys. And so, if you look at the score, you can see that there are a variety of these patterns in different keys. The chord progression is the same, but it is important to practice it in different keys. So just as I have done now, play through the exercise in as many keys as you can so that these fundamental progressions become natural to you, and also that your ear gets accustomed to them. If these progressions become second nature when you play them, Then you can focus more on, for example, the dynamics of the piece, rather than simply thinking what chord is coming next. Of course, experimenting with different chords is important, but not knowing a variety of chord progressions can slow you down and affect how you perform those chord progressions. These are not complicated passages to play. You do not need to be a pianist, for example. Someone with little experience of playing the keyboard, or say a guitarist, could easily learn to perform chord progressions like these with some practice. Of course, having a large library of sounds certainly helps, in the sense that I have access to a large number of presets, and do not need to program interesting sounds before I can actually play something. And so following on from this, we can go to exercise 6. And for exercise 6, I will be using the Orchestral Essentials library, and a patch that is called Full Orchestra 2 Suspense. If we play it, we can hear that it goes from powerful and dark bass instruments to rich strings at the top end. So this is an example of a library which we can use straight away out of the box without editing anything. But of course, you have the possibility to modify settings as well, if need be. In exercise 6, the bass note remains the same throughout, but the chords change above it. So in the first example, we have a C in the bass, and the chord is alternating between a C major and an F minor 6. Of course, we can use inversions of the chords in order to make a passage more interesting. And, for example, to follow or create a melody line. And of course, you can move within the octaves. So even a simple 2-chord progression can have a lot of variety within it. In our example of exercise 6, you can see a variety of these chord progressions in different keys, including an erroneous one where we have F going to G minor 6. This doesn't give the effect we are trying to create here, but sounds more like a Christmas song. Still, perhaps interesting, but it is here by mistake. In effect, we have the chord alternating between the second rather than the fourth interval. But overall, it is clear that with very simple chord progressions, you can create a lot of music. You do not need to overcomplicate many times, but by using interesting choices of bass notes and different chord inversions that help support a melody or create new melodies, you can go a long way with a very simple chord progression. And now we can move on to exercise 7.